Welcome to The Joyful Frugalista, the podcast that's all about living a richer life with less. I'm your host, Serina Bird, author and passionate frugalista. Each episode, we dive into inspiring stories, practical tips and joyful conversations that help you create abundance, embrace mindful spending, and live your best life, all without breaking the bank. So grab a cuppa, get comfy, and let's explore how being a frugalista can lead to freedom, happiness, and a whole lot of joy. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Please consult a qualified professional before making financial decisions. Hello, frugalistas, and welcome to today's episode. Today, I have a special guest. Of course, all of my guests are special, but today I've invited someone back for a second time because she is super special. And that's because she's at the forefront of championing financial education. But first, I have a favor. If you love this podcast and you find it useful, please pay it forward by liking or commenting. And also join the Joyful Frugalista Facebook group to join in on discussions with like-minded frugalistas. Today, we're going to talk about financial literacy, and in particular, a subset of that, which is financial education. Especially, we're going to delve into where the gaps and the problems are. So Lacey Filipich is an international award-winning financial educator, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and, plot twist, also a chemical engineer who's worked in Australia and overseas. She founded Money School in 2010 to help Australians master money and has been teaching personal finance skills ever since. Lacey learned about money from her accountant mum and by making lots of mistakes. But also, she did make a lot of good choices. You did, Lacey. I know you did. She teaches adults what they wish they'd learned in school and teaches parents how to teach their kids the way her mum taught her. Her most recent focus is the impact of climate disruption on wealth, which she believes is the greatest threat to our financial futures. And she's just also published a white paper along with two other co-authors, Jenny Rolfe-Wallace and Dr. Tracy West, which explores how financial education and money coaching can be reframed as rigorous, essential pillars of adult financial capability and well-being. But before we get into talking with Lacey about her work, I actually want to give a disclaimer. And this is in addition to the it's not financial advice disclaimer that I've already given. So Lacey's work, especially the white paper, sometimes includes advocating changes to government policy. In talking with her today, nothing that I might discuss represents any particular political view I might have or any criticism of current or future government policy. So, disclaimer out of the way. Welcome once again, Lacey.
Thank you so much for having me, Serina. It's a delight to be here.
Well, it's such a delight to have you on again, and I really want to acknowledge you have always been so supportive to other authors in the personal finance space, not just myself, but many others who, are active content creators, but especially women in this space.
Yeah, it's an important thing for me. I think when I started this in 2010, so it's been a while, there was an overwhelming amount of male voices and not a lot of women. And the way I see it, the more of us there are to choose from, the more chance there is of people hearing something that they relate to and they connect with. And if that's what it takes to get people learning about money, I'm all for it. And I'm so excited to see just such a broad range of people coming into this space from all sorts of backgrounds, including things like public service. I think it brings a real diversity, and I think that's important because we want people to find someone they can relate to, and not everyone's the same. So it's great to have the variety.
Yeah, it does make a difference, doesn't it? I got a request recently from someone who wanted financial advice for their son who was in his 20s. And I was like, well, you could follow my work, but it's probably just like listening to their mum and they're probably going to switch off. They probably want like some young male voices in their 20s that will relate more. And Gen X women, who are the majority of my listeners, not everyone, it's inclusive, they also don't want to listen to advice from someone who's like their son because it sort of feels like weird.
Exactly. Yeah. So more voices, as far as I'm concerned, is better. And the work that everyone does, everyone brings such a different view to it. Like, I love your book on how to pay your mortgage off quickly. Like, that laser focus is so important for some people because they're going to see that title and be like, that's what I need, and the more of these we have, the better, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And yeah, it's still much needed work, isn't it? And I'm always amazed, like even at work or at barbecues, community events, other events, just how often people just don't make good financial decisions or don't know, have never thought about it. Just too busy doing their busyness of their day to day and never sort of thought about their future selves.
Exactly. And I mean, you mentioned my mum before. The reason I learned about money is because my mum talked about it. But there's still quite a taboo, and particularly from different cultural backgrounds. I see a wide variety of responses from different ethnic groups, religious groups. There's some places where it's just you don't talk about it. And my family had British origin and very stiff upper lip, and that's not polite, and we don't talk about that. So my mum kind of broke the mold in that she did talk about it. So I'm just lucky. That was the ovarian lottery, right? But if you didn't hear about it at home, your parents didn't speak about it, and certainly for anyone who went through school after 2011, which is when it went into the curriculum, and it's really, the stuff that's in the curriculums are really good. The reason why we're not getting great results is because we're not delivering it consistently well. But if you went to school before that, chances are you didn't have it in the classroom. And so if you didn't get it from your parents and you didn't get it from the classroom, you had to go looking. And some people get excited about it. Like there's people who get really interested in this and go like, I'm going to go and learn. I'm going to go look for the person. But it can be just sitting in the background in your life and you just never see it, do you? And it's only when it becomes a problem that then you go, ooh, should have done something about that. And that's often when I talk about my mistakes, some of the stuff is because I didn't go looking first and then I stuffed up and went, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. But it'd be much better if everyone learned what they needed to in advance, or at least at the point of need, before they buy the thing or spend the money, then go and do the research. Then that's helpful. Finding those trusted people to get that information from is also really important. That's a skill we don't teach people either.
Yeah, you're right, because there's so many voices, aren't there? Like crypto is another. I'm not saying crypto is inherently good or inherently bad, but it is highly volatile. And, if you don't understand what you're doing, it can be a real problem. And so people will see these things in the news and they might not necessarily have the understanding to think about their own risk profile and the risk profile of what they might be investing in.
Exactly. And unfortunately, because regulation can't keep up with this evolution, like when you think about crypto, we weren't even sure where to put it. Is it an asset? Is it a currency? Even working out what that is, because it was so revolutionary, is hard. It's really hard for policy to keep up. It's hard for financial advice to keep up. All of those things are really intense. And so when these new things come on and then outside what we consider normal financial advice, who do you turn to? And it leads the way for people to scam or to sell products that are not going to be good for people, and they hype it up because they can sit outside our system. Now, the great news is, of course, we are getting onto regulating it. It's being included. It will become part of financial advice, but that's taken a while. So crypto is an example, but there was the buy now, pay later stuff too that wasn't regulated for a while as well. These things come in and we only learn when we go, oh, shoot, I need to do something about that. So asking people to, I think, keep up to speed themselves is quite a big ask. We do need those trusted systems and professionals to be able to help protect people and have those warning bells ringing so that they don't find themselves getting into struggle street and then needing to dig themselves out of that problem.
So talking about struggle street, I know in your white paper you talk about different forms of financial advice. So one of them is financial counselling. So what is financial counselling and how accessible is it to people who might be really struggling?
So I always talk about financial counsellors as the unsung heroes of our personal finance system. And they're not as well publicised. So hopefully people listening have heard of them before, but if you haven't, a financial counsellor is very different from a financial advisor. Counsellors are for people who are struggling, whether it's with debt or to make ends meet. You just can't get ahead. And look, that's a lot of people in Australia at the moment. The estimates are sitting close to 6 million Australians are experiencing financial stress. So when you think about that, that's like 20% of our population, over 20% of our population. So 1 in 5 people is possibly walking around at the moment feeling stressed. And why it's important we acknowledge that is when you experience financial stress, your ability to make good decisions decreases. It's called cognitive capacity decline, and Princeton University researched it in 2013 and found it's the same as going a night without sleep or being over the legal driving limit. It's 13 IQ points. And so when people are in that state, it's really hard to make good financial choices, but they're in such a critical state that they need it. So when you see a financial counselor, they can't sell you anything and they're free. Anyone can access them. You can find them via National Debt Helpline. So you can go onto their site, ndh.org.au. You can call their helpline or find one that's local to you. Financial counsellors only ever work for not-for-profit organisations. So you'll probably have several of those. I'm in Western Australia. We've got 14 organisations over here that deliver financial counselling.
We have one that I know of, which is called CARE. And actually, I'm sure it's probably the same with the same ones in WA, but their resources online are really good, some of their budgeting and other resources.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fantastic. The thing we struggle with is there's only about 1,100 financial counsellors in Australia. So that works out at like 1 per 5,000 people that might need them. It's not a lot. So what often happens is people wait till they're in crisis, then they call, and then they have to wait for, could be a few weeks, for the face-to-face appointment. And of course, during that period, they're getting themselves into a worse debt spiral or stuff like that. So that's why I always say to people, call early. Call as soon as you're losing a little bit of sleep, or as soon as you notice that when you're driving in the car, your brain is going to, oh, what am I going to do if the rent goes up, or how am I going to afford groceries this week? That's when you call. Call early. We have seen an improvement lately because there's a new fund. It's called the Financial Counselling Industry Fund, FCIF, and industry, so mostly banks, is now contributing money so that they can do extension projects for financial counselling. The theory being that, of course, the banks benefit when people pay back their debts. It's good for them. Cynical me would also say, well, you've been part of the cause, so you probably should pay for it. But that's my opinion. But I love that they're now doing that, and the intent is to try and get more financial counsellors. Because when you look at the ratio, about 1,100 financial counsellors, we've got about 15,000 advisors. So very big difference in the workforce.
Yeah, and I would say too, with financial counselling, look, they've seen it all. Like often people sort of think, well, I'm earning good money, like it's embarrassing for me to be in this situation. It might be not due to your fault at all. Like you might have had a marriage breakup or learnt that a partner's had a gambling debt or all sorts of things. But there's often this sense of fear and shame. You shouldn't be in this, but like they've seen it all. They've seen everything.
Exactly. And if anyone's feeling that way, there's a fantastic report that came out from RMIT and Extra Foundation a couple of weeks ago, and it's about financial wellbeing. There was one chart in there that really stood out to me, and it draws on ANZ Bank research. So I normally wouldn't promote a commercial entity, but the research is interesting. Anyway, it says your financial well-being is over half. It was 54.5% dependent on things that are out of your control. So the behavior is less than half of the contribution. So whenever you hear people have that shame and guilt, they're like, oh, I should know this. I should know better. It's my fault. Probably at least half of it isn't. Half of it is probably demographic stuff that you have no choice over, or systemic stuff, the way that things are set up. And so I really hope people stop beating themselves up so much when they hear that it's not all your fault.
Exactly. But you can take action, which is the key thing.
Exactly.
But in addition to financial counsellors, there's also financial advice, or forms of financial advice. So what are they that is available for people?
So there's two sort of general chunks of financial advice, and one is general advice. So that's the sort of advice you can give most people. Like you should be checking the fees in your superannuation fund is very clear for everybody. But if you need individual advice, like should I put more money into super or should I be investing in shares? That's when you need individual advice, personalized advice. So obviously they've got very different levels of information they need to have to be able to give you that decision, right? So when it's general advice, they don't need to really know you very much because it's stuff that holds the test of time. When you need personal advice, financial advisors have to go through a really rigorous process to interview you to understand your financial situation, and they have to issue with something formal called a statement of advice, an SOA. And obviously that takes time to develop. Now, while we might have very similar actions, they're making sure. The point is they make sure that it suits you and that it's going to be right for you because no one's identical. They might have guidelines that are pretty consistent, but they might have to tweak them for each individual. And so that can be very expensive. So the average cost per year is over $4,000. I think it's close to $4,800 a year for ongoing advice. And in your first year, you've also got to do the statement of advice. So the last time I saw the two numbers added up, which was in 2022 with the Padua report, it was $8,000 in your first year. So that is prohibitive for a lot of people. Now, financial advisors who do a good job, and there's most of them do a good job, can be worth their weight in gold. That advice that you get could be life-changing for your wealth and for your retirement. And particularly for those of us that are interested in retiring early, it can be really useful. But because it is so expensive, a lot of people think, I can't really afford it, or I don't need it, or there are better things I could do. And so you've got that two ends of the spectrum, because there's not a lot of people who'd sign up for, $4,800 a year or $8,000 in the first year. There's a lot of people who go, that's not worth it. And in a lot of cases, they're probably right. It's probably the upper 20% of wealth in Australia that's going to get the most value. But it's really sad to think that everyone else might miss out on the knowledge that those advisors have. So the way that we've got at the moment with ASIC, you have to be licensed to give individual advice, the personalized advice. That requires a degree and requires 3 years of study. And you have to do a year of practice, and you have to get certified, and you have to, there's a lot there. There's an ethics exam. With general advice, it's not the same. And we have people now who are authorized representatives. So a financial advice licensee who's got the official ASIC sign off, tick, you're allowed to do it, can sub-license to individuals to give general advice. So that is kind of how ASIC wants us to behave. The Australian Securities Investments Commission says you should be getting licensed, and that's what they generally mean. But what the issue with that is it's not the same level of qualification. Unfortunately, it's not maybe not unfortunately, you don't have to do the 3-year degree. It's a different certificate, and you're not registered as a financial advisor on the Financial Advisor Register, which is where everyone should go and check. If you're going to work with someone who wants to give you advice, make sure they're registered, make sure they haven't got any issues with their licensing.
This is a problem. I'm thinking
Yeah.
of Melissa Caddick, who I can't remember if she was on that or not. She might have also scammed it.
She used someone else's license. There's people doing this all the time now. It's really rising with AI. When you see this, we're using this license because I have to give a license number and say this is our license number, so you can go and check it. And there has been reports in the scamming community. I don't mean the people who are doing the scamming. I mean the people who are trying to prevent the scamming. There's been reports about how these organizations are taking other people's licensing details and pretending they're theirs. And so if you just see the number at the bottom, that's not enough. You need to go and check the register and make sure that that person is who they said they are and that they are authorized, right? So that is really important for your protection. And unfortunately, scammers get smarter and smarter as the tech gets better and better. That's an important protection mechanism. But so what we've got is, if you want to do financial content, you can go and get the general advice coverage by becoming an authorized representative, or you can just give general advice where you don't do one-on-one, you don't do the statement of advice. And so obviously that's a lot less expensive to deliver in terms of the time and energy, but it's not as personalized for people. They're not getting as much like, oh, well, but I've got this funny little issue with, an old family trust or whatever it might be, legacy shares, a property ownership. You're not getting that level of detail if you go for general versus the personalized advice.
And so then I guess we've got in the media a lot more the finfluencers category as well. I'm probably not seeing as much on TikTok, but I know they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, they are there, aren't they? And look, so the way I think about this, there are people trying to fill that gap between counselling and advice, right? So in between expensive advice and free counselling, there's probably the majority of Australians, maybe we say 60%, that would be my guess if I was going to give it a thumbs up. But a decent chunk of Australians who are not ready for advice, but they're not in stress, but they want to do better with their money. And so finfluencers, people who create social media content, are providing what looks like education. And most of it is educational. Most of it is good, but it's really hard to tell when you don't know. So if I see a video, and you'd be the same, Serina, the video pops up on TikTok or on LinkedIn or LinkedIn, that's how old fashioned I am. Everyone else is out having fun on the fun social media and I'm on the nerdy one. But when I see it come up, I've got enough knowledge to go, that's not right for me. Or they haven't mentioned this particular thing, which is really important. And I had one the other day where someone, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, had promoted banks as a source of financial education. And I was like, ooh, that's a commercial entity that you are promoting.
No conflict there.
Or bad practice. By the way, I'm authorized representative under general advice, doing that on national media, on the television. So that trap is really easy to fall into because they might genuinely not know. And I don't know about you, Serena, but I get a lot of people asking me, how do I do what you do? And they have these great intentions. Like I had a young lady who was like, I want to teach my friends about ETFs. And I was like, great. Teaching them about shares is awesome. Are you going to teach them about LICs as well, LICs? And she's like, what's a LIC? And I'm like, well, if you don't know, you can't teach well. And that's what happens with the influencers. I think a lot of it is not malicious. I think it's just they miss things because they don't know, because there's no qualification. Anyone can just do it. And then there are some that are dodgy. Then there are some that are in there producing content so they can get commissions on something, whether it's referral commissions or whether they've got a product to sell. And those ones that are presenting content as educational, I'm helping you upskill, but actually trying to sell you something, they're the ones that really I find very ick. So the whole spectrum, but we've basically got open slather so long as you don't cross into financial advice territory in Australia, and you've got to be pretty egregious for ASIC to be able to act because they have to take you to court and fine you. So it's not like a short process. So yeah, we're certainly seeing them do that. They've done lots of active talking to finfluencers about it in 2022. They pulled a bunch of finfluencers together and were like, hey, you don't get licensed and you say these things, we are going to have a chat. And a lot of behavior changed. There were people who took down podcasts and stopped doing it, or people who went and got licensed. So they're doing their best, but it's very hard to keep up. And like you say, they have to see that that content is created or someone has to tell them. And it's hard to find things on the mass of the internet and social media now. I think a lot of it goes
Yeah.
under the radar.
I did notice that there were a few podcasts who'd been quite successful that did come down. And I won't say that the podcasts were bad because I think they were giving, quite sensible advice, but it was also very blinkered advice. Like, this is the formula that works for me. You sort of follow this formula. An investing strategy for, say, a man in his late 20s, not married, no children, high income is going to be very different for a single mum in her 40s. Everyone's different, and so their investing strategy is going to be different.
Exactly. And some of this it's well intended, but it is very typical to see people who are convinced that the way they did it is the way. And I think after 16 years in personal finance, I am convinced there is more than one way to skin every single cat. There are very few things that are absolute in personal finance, very few. Most things are a question of preference, risk tolerance, time of life, all the things you just talked about, what your situation might be. And so, yeah, I think that's where producing that content, even if it's well intended, can have poor effects. Like when I think about that content creator, personal finance expert saying, oh, you should go and check your bank for financial education, the flow-on effects of that gives me the heebie-jeebies. How many people are going to go, oh, I'll go do their education? Of course, a bank is a business that sells debt. Like, it's a customer acquisition strategy. It makes me very nervous. I hope we can prevent it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, some of the big banks have been a lot better.
Oh, yeah.
But if it's like how to get a home loan is at the end of it.
Yeah, and that's the
Without,
thing. It could be the
yeah.
best education ever. I'm not saying they're not doing good education. I'm saying they're using it as a pathway to build trust so they can sell you something. They could be the best businesses in the world. They could be selling you things that are amazing. But when you have a vested interest in the decision your learners are going to make, it's very hard to consider that. I mean, I just say it's not independent. You're getting something with a commercial interest. So it's that whole, I would only ever take, it's like I wouldn't go to McDonald's for food education or even Woolworths. I wouldn't be taking a Woolworths course for food education because if they've got an interest in showing me a particular brand, that kind of thing, they could be giving me great info. It could be very accurate, but they are doing it for a reason. So I think if there was no branding on the training, I'd be totally different, but they are using it with their branding and their pipeline. So that's my, cynical me going, I wouldn't go near it, just to reduce the potential for conflict of interest, basically.
And I know you were part of the movement to get, say, Commonwealth Bank's education programs out of schools as well, or at least you had a view on it.
Definitely. No, I definitely spoke to a lot of people about it. The thing that turned the tide on that was ASIC again did a great investigation. There were 10 school banking programs around Australia. 2 of them were national and 8 were regional, like local credit unions. And they released a report that showed very clearly that there was no improvement in saving behaviours, but very sophisticated marketing techniques being used on young minds that weren't able to differentiate marketing from education. And sadly, I think adults are probably the same. After that, one national program went, wow, that's terrible. We're closing down straight away. The other one, the biggest one, which everyone probably, I still have an account. I still have a Dolomite account from when I was 5. I've still got the original one. It's not called that anymore, but I've still got the same.
I don't, but yeah. I'm just amazed that you still have one.
I keep it as like from 1987. I've had that account for a very long time. The numbers are burned into my head. I don't use it for much, to be fair. I'm not making them much money out of it. But the point being that they did not close down their program until basically forced. And they were forced because 3 states said we are forbidding these in our school. in our school system. You could not have them. And I think it was Queensland, Victoria, and New South Wales. So this is a big deal for them. So that just gives you to show you how commercial entities behave with this stuff. And I talk about it. You're kind of branding kids. You're rubber stamping them. That's what you'd like. You're sort of building it into their psyche that this is trustworthy. I know that 50% of Australians had one of those Dolomite accounts. So, which was fine back when the program came in the 1930s, and it was the government-owned bank, but it became privatised in the early 90s. And since then, they have a profit motive because they're a listed company. They're just trying to do what they're supposed to do as a listed company, but they're not the right place for education. And I think for adults as well, I don't think it's a good idea to get education from people who have a vested interest in what you're going to do after you've had the education.
Yeah. So with all of this, leading into your white paper, like what are the gaps and what are the problems? And why did you go from just thinking about maybe putting a post out on LinkedIn to actually drafting a white paper?
Yeah. Well, the latter bit, the reason I stopped just posting about it on LinkedIn and doing a white paper is I feel like I'm screaming into the void. It's like, it's time to get serious about this. So we talked about this gap between counselling and advice and why finfluencers have filled it. And in the middle are also heaps of other people doing incredible work. So content creators like yourself, authors. And then there's two groups of people that I talk about in terms of a vocation rather than a profession. So financial education, that's what I do. I just teach people how money works. I don't tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Everything I do sticks to ASICs. It's got to be factual information. So I aim for it's balanced, fair, factual with everything I do. You'll get the pros and the cons, but I'll never say to you, you should put more into super. Like I'll go, here is the pros and cons of putting more into super. Here's how it works. That's what financial educators do. Then you have this next step, I think, which is kind of, it's where you get more towards advice. It's money coaches. And money coaches often focus on behavioral stuff around money because so much of our problems with money aren't numerical. Some of them are, look, I've just got a bad habit, or I think this way about money and it's counterproductive, or like that kind of stuff that doesn't even really fit. Like financial advice doesn't cover that. Like there's a bit of behavioral psychology and behavioral economics in financial advice, but it's not their bread and butter, whereas money coaches, it is very much about the behavioral stuff. And what we're seeing is a lot of people who are leaving the advice profession, and it's notable that the advice profession has gone from nearly 30,000 to under 15,000 since the Banking Royal Commission in 9 years. So we're getting a lot of people exiting the profession, but becoming money coaches. And they might either become a money coach that is licensed under that same general authorised representative licensing arrangement, or they forsake the licensing altogether and just focus on the coaching. And of course, the people who have technical training, those ex-advisors know those lines. They know those borders. They're like, I don't cross into the advice here. And if they did, they know they'd get in trouble. But they're not the only people who do money coaching or financial education. Anyone can call themselves a financial educator. I often say, like, I'm a financial educator of 16 years. That's a self-appointed title. I made it up for myself. There's no criteria. I didn't have to do training. There's no certification body. There's no code of conduct. There's nothing like that. You just make it up as you go along. And for me, what I'm seeing is so many of these mistakes that are being made under the licensing arrangements that are currently required if you want to do what that particular, for example, that influencer was doing, well, an influencer content creator was doing on that TV program. They're compliant. They're giving bad education, in my opinion. You should not be saying that on national television. I'm like, that's not cool, but they're compliant. And they're not doing it deliberately. They're not being malicious. They just don't know better. Like they don't know that it's not fair to put Money Smart, the National Debt Helpline, and your bank and not explain that one of those has a commercial interest. So my position is getting stronger and stronger, and we need training. We need to make sure people who are doing financial education and doing money coaching are trained so they don't fall into these traps, because then none of them are doing it. Well, I would say 99% of them aren't doing it maliciously. Maybe there's a few bad actors. Most of them are trying to do good. Most of them are trying to fix this problem and help people increase their capability. So let's help them do it properly. Let's change how we approach this. Now, it's not necessarily a case of needing to change legislation, because we've seen how that can become counterproductive, and financial advice has seen this. It's been such a hard job for them. They've done lots of reviews. They're really proactive, but the profession has struggled on that side. If there's a way we can do it voluntarily, collaboratively, can we do it in partnership with existing organisations? There doesn't have to necessarily be legislative change, but can we start, and I'm going to borrow a phrase from Dr. Pushpa Wood, who works at Massey University in their FinEd Centre, can we professionalise this workforce? can we bring them up to speed? Because the work they do is essential. It's financially accessible for people because a coach is a lot less expensive than an advisor, and often precursor for when you're going to need advice later. You need to fix this behavioral small stuff, and then you'll have more money available that justifies the advice. And
Yeah,
getting people
exactly.
who've been in crisis through that crisis, and then, hey, how do we set you up so this doesn't happen again? How do we make sure that we help you avoid this? That is important work, and it is currently neglected, and it's ignored legislatively and from policy point of view because it's so hard. And we don't know what the best way to do it is. And trying to get to that point, it's not an easy problem to solve. There are countries around the world battling with this. Everyone is trying different stuff. So we've got to look at what the research says and what can do really good things and who's doing a great job elsewhere. And my suggestion as a basis is let's start with some training. Let's start with some basic competency stuff so people who want to do this can learn how to do it properly.
Fantastic. Now, where can people find your white paper?
So head to fincapforall, as in financial capability for all.com.au, and you can grab the white paper there. You don't need to sign up with your email. But if you read it and you really like it, I would love it if you signed up as a supporter. So there's just a form at the bottom of the page. If you sign up as an individual, we'll pop up your name and your role. So I put financial educator for me. If you sign up as an organisation, we just put up the name of the organisation, and we have plenty of people who've signed up for both because they are the CEO of their organisation. But the more we can show that there's interest and support for this, the better chance we've got of getting it in front of people who can solve this problem. And there's a massive network of heaps of people committed to this, and it's one piece of a bigger financial capability problem in terms of we need a lot of systemic change as well. But if we can get this in front of the people making those decisions, of the groups working on it, then the chances of having a really good outcome and that flowing on to helping Australians become financially capable. So no matter what their circumstances, they can at least make the best choice they can in those circumstances. I think that's going to have huge benefits for everyone.
Wonderful and well said. Now, I have a final question for you, and this is, do you have a Frugalista tip to share?
Yes, I do. So
Just one. I know you
yes.
have many.
Yeah, slightly embarrassing. Okay, I always look at this and I shake my head at myself a little bit. But I have a retainer that I wear at night to stop me cracking my teeth. And when I clean it, I use those denture tabs. And a long time ago, I went, well, people use that for 2 sets and I've only got one retainer, so I'm going to halve the tablet. And so I just use half a tablet now and my retainer's clean. So the tip for that is don't overuse a product if you don't have to. I think if you remember even with, shampoo twice, maybe you don't need to do that. So it might only save me about $12 a year, but every little bit counts. So that's my hot tip. Try and, check on that dosing and make sure you're not overusing if you don't have to.
I love that. And to overshare, I also use the denture tablets to clean the toilet from time to time. They do a really, really good bleaching job. So they are very useful and they're obviously very effective. So I'm sure you can get away with half to clean your dentures.
Yeah,
Or actually not your dentures, your retainer.
Yeah. But no, the dentist has been like, yeah, this is really clean because I take it in whenever I've got an appointment. And she's like, this is doing really well. And I'm like, I know.
I also do the same with my dishwasher. So when I use a commercial product, I tend to use the powder rather than tablets. And I do
Yeah.
use my homemade as well, but I use half of
Yeah.
what they recommend and it's fine.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it works perfectly.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lacey, thank you so much for being my guest. So for those who are interested, make sure to check out the white paper. It's not a super long document, so don't think that you're going to have to put a whole day aside to read it. It's quite short and it's also very well written, so you can get the main concepts fairly quickly. But if you care about financial education for yourself, for your children, for others, do check it out and make sure that you've got an opinion on it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Serena. I really appreciate you helping spread the word.
Thank you.